All right, welcome once again. My name is Asif Rahmani. Let me take you through a few of these slides here and then I'll get started in the presentation. First of all, thank you very much for joining me today. Some of you have joined before, so I appreciate you coming back. Those of you who are new, thank you very much for joining. Hope you find this a good experience. I just want to run a few things by you over here, some SharePoint facts. Microsoft SharePoint, of course, is a huge product. It's the fastest growing product in the Microsoft's arsenal of product. So some facts about that here. This still remains to be true. The lack of adoption in SharePoint still is the #1 reason that SharePoint projects fail. I don't know how many of you people agree with this, but I've seen this over almost a decade of experience that I've been working with SharePoint, training, consulting, and just working with making solutions on top of SharePoint. And for that, to that matter, we have this site SharePoint-videos.com, which I'm sure many of you are aware of. And for there, we offer all kinds of on-demand training, end-user training, sub-site owners, power users, site collection admins, developers, IT professionals. Everybody can get information out of, good information, we think, out of SharePointVideos.com. We don't just focus on end users. We don't just focus on developers. We focus on everybody. And we, like our motto says, create powerful solutions without code. That's what we focus on our site. If you do happen to go to the site, I would recommend checking out, let me see over here, either clicking on this free videos here or clicking on view our free videos here, and you're going to see currently there's 36+ free videos out there, so you'll see a lot of good stuff, hopefully. And this webinar is also getting recorded, and it will go there as well. Okay, oops, next slide here. So here's some of the videos that we have up there. There's just too many to list, so I just took a snapshot of a few of them, talking about chart web part, navigation, management, workflows, external content types, data view web parts, and a whole lot more. We offer single user licensing in terms of single user subscription to the site, and also DVDs that you can buy for offline viewing of videos, and also corporate licensing, so that your users can come to our site to watch the videos, or we can deploy a subset of our videos to your intranet. And we have many corporations who are already using our solutions. You can look at it, testimonials tab on our site. Here are some of the topics covered. Some of them hopefully you'll find useful: SharePoint Designer, reporting services, branding, workflows, project management, access services, InfoPath, and a whole lot of other stuff also that's coming up. Any feedback, any thoughts about other projects, other topics that you're not seeing on the site that you would like to see would be definitely appreciated. Let us know. Our usual video length is about 10 to 15 minutes long. It's more of a kind of a course, really, than just a small snippet of a 1 or 2 minute videos that you see out there on many other sites. All right, I am going to begin now. There's a quick introduction of myself, but I'll go through that really quickly. I do want to focus as much as possible on of course, the content that we need to cover here. So once again, welcome. My name is Asif Rahmani. I'm a SharePoint Server MVP and a Microsoft Certified Trainer. And I'll be talking about today using SharePoint Designer in the real world. This topic is a difficult one to cover, to be honest. I've been working with SharePoint Designer for a long time now. Before it was SharePoint Designer, actually it was a different product altogether, which many of you know, I'm sure. So I'll be talking about some history, so some pros and cons, of course, of the product, and exactly why would you want to use it. If you don't use it, what are you missing out on? Who should be using it? How should it be deployed in the organization? What you should watch out for? Things like that, right? So all this stuff and more I'm hoping to cover in this topic. Let's see how far we get. All right. Let me just make sure everybody's able to hear me okay. I'm just going to look at the questions and answer panel here and make sure there's no issues before I begin. All right. Great. I think it's all right here. I can hear. All right. Thank you, folks. Appreciate it. Okay. So like I said, I'm not going to go too far into who I am, what I do, and all that stuff, but here's a snapshot of who I am. Principal contributor at SharePointVideos.com, and also I offer training, specifically SharePoint Designer / InfoPath / No Code Solutions training through Critical Path Training. And I'm a co-author of a bunch of books. The Microsoft Office SharePoint Designer 2007. We had the pleasure to start up writing about SharePoint Designer with that. Then we went on doing SharePoint Designer 2010 book, and also I've contributed to the Real World SharePoint 2010 book as well. And I'm sure I've seen some of you. I've seen the names over here at conferences, and I hope to see more of you at other conferences that we meet up at. SharePoint Connections is coming up. I'll be there as well. So if you do come over there, please be sure to come and say hi. I would love to meet you guys. All right. So I'm going to begin here. Going forward, what to expect during this presentation. This is not too much of a technical deep dive like my other presentations are. So this one is a 200 or more like 249 level presentation, and the focus of this presentation, as it says over here, is going to be really understanding, giving you an understanding, first of all, of what my understanding is about SharePoint Designer, all the stuff that I talked about so far, and also maybe asking you some questions as well. I'm hoping this to be more interactive in nature. SharePoint Designer is a product that has been the topic of controversy in many organizations. I'm sure you agree about that, right? And it's good to have a discussion so I can answer your questions, and maybe I can put some questions forth myself, which you might be thinking about, and just understand exactly what the product can do, how you should be using it, and as I mentioned, who should be using it, who should not be using it also, the different definitions of people who are using it out there, etc. Okay, so we'll talk about all that stuff. Demos, I'll definitely do some demos, but I got to tell you that in most of my presentations, I love doing demos almost the whole time. That will not be the case here, most probably. I'll still probably get into it and do some demos here as well, but there's not going to be as much as I am used to doing in other presentations. Still, you might be surprised that half of the presentation still turns out to be a demo, stuff that I would like to show you. Put your questions in Q&A. I'll address them both, like it says, during and at the end of the presentation. I'm going to try my best. Like I said, I'm here for you. This is what I would like to do in this webinar, to engage with you, to discuss things with you. All right. Before I do this here, there's a poll that I have. We don't usually do polls, but I'm going to put out a poll. There we go. If you could answer this poll, I would really appreciate it. So I just want to see if you guys have already been in my sessions before, if you heard me before or not. Just want to see how many people have been there before, how many are new. Well, a lot of you guys are voting, and I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Just a yes and a no answer. Okay. Wow. All right, so that's quite a lot. Let me see. I'm not sure if I'll be able to share the poll results with you, but I'll tell you it's 75% of you said that you've been in sessions before, and 24% you are new, never heard me before. Well, all right. Yes, 75-25 almost. Great. Let me close the polls here. I really appreciate it. Here we go. I can share it too, I guess. Okay. So you should be able to see the screen and what the poll results are. All right. Let me hide the poll results. Move forward. Okay. So now you should be able to see my screen again. Let's move forward. Assumption of the audience today, folks who want to learn more about SharePoint Designer. So you might have heard about SharePoint Designer, or you might have seen it at conference or done a little bit with it, want to know more about it. Some of you might be developers and IT professionals who are wondering if they should be using SharePoint Designer themselves, right? So you are in charge of managing an environment or developing solutions on top of it, and should you be looking at SharePoint Designer? All right. Now, IT administrators who have allowed some form of SharePoint Designer usage in their organization and are wondering what kind of problems can possibly occur. I'm sure at least a few of you are in that boat. And lastly, here's other people that I think are there. IT administrators who are not fans of SharePoint Designer and would rather eat mud than let their users use SharePoint Designer in their pristine environment. I've met many of those people as well. And that's okay. I have nothing against anybody. And, some people just have had a really bad experience with SharePoint Designer, so it's completely understood. I'm hoping to change some of that, some of those views, but it is what it is, right? Okay, so I do have one more poll over here, and then I'm going to have another poll a little bit later. So I'm going to launch this poll, and if you could help me understand the audience, I would really appreciate it. All right. What is your experience with SharePoint Designer? See a few people saying the fourth option as well. I had a feeling. Now, just so if it makes you feel better as you're filling out this poll, I was definitely one of the people in that fourth category who used it, broke my stuff, and I stopped using it. This is way before SharePoint Designer was front page era, and then I came back to it. So no shame in admitting that. That's fine. All right. Seems like 86% of you have voted already. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much for this interaction. And I'll close this poll and share this with you. All right, so here's the makeup of the people who are in this webinar. Okay, here we go. I think it's showing it now. The poll results. Used it somewhat is mostly. And a few people, only a few people used it, broke your stuff, and you stopped using it. All right. All right. Well, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. This helps me also understand how we should go forward with the presentation here. Okay. Let's hide this stuff. Your screen should be returning to, there we go, to PowerPoint now. So when you talk about SharePoint 2010, and even before SharePoint 2007, you really have three main choices of building solutions on top of SharePoint. You got to remember that SharePoint is really a platform, right? SharePoint is not like a product. It's not a Microsoft Word, Excel type of product where you just open it up, use it. It's very much you need to build your systems on top of it. It could be really complex applications that you build on top of it, or just simple collaboration mechanisms of sharing documents and list items, etc. Whatever you do, you can have contributors, designers, site administrators, IT professionals, and actually also developers using stuff using the browser, obviously, customizing things, managing security, creating lists, and all that stuff. On the other end of the spectrum, if you really need solutions on top of SharePoint and you don't know where to go, you will probably turn to a developer to have them build a solution using Visual Studio. So of course, Visual Studio can make great solutions on top of SharePoint. I completely agree with that. I've done it. My background is also in development in SharePoint for many years before I stopped doing development. I shouldn't say stopped. Before I became a no-code developer, I should say. So I was doing code development, and it's extremely powerful, the stuff that you can do. And you can do a whole lot more in Visual Studio 2010 now. Absolutely, I agree with that. But there's a huge, big set of people who are coming up and using these no-code applications like SharePoint Designer, and also like InfoPath, and also like Visio now, which lets you make workflows, and Access for Access services, and Excel for Excel services, and other stuff. So these no-code developers are the ones who fit into this middle box. Specifically, we're talking about SharePoint Designer, so that's why I put only SharePoint Designer here. But the folks here are designers, site administrators, developers, and IT professionals who are using SharePoint Designer, and who I also think should be using SharePoint Designer. And I'll also break down a little bit more of the roles and responsibilities as we go further about the usage of SharePoint Designer. But know one thing, please, over here. Notice one thing. Really, really careful. Let's see. Here we go. Use a highlighter here. Contributors are not here in the bottom, right? That is not a typo, of course, because contributors do not belong using SharePoint Designer. They have nothing to do with SharePoint Designer. Contributors are folks who are members of the site, right? People who have contributed site permission, contribute permission level, should I say. Those folks should not be using SharePoint Designer. Oops. All right. So please keep that in mind. I'm sure some of you already know about that. Excuse me. Had some issues over here with the PowerPoint. Okay, moving forward here, what is SharePoint Designer? This is something that, of course, is obvious to most of you. Hey, this is something very simple. Why are you talking about that, Asif? I know what SharePoint Designer is, but I have an analogy to make over here. That's the reason I put this up over here. Here's what I think SharePoint Designer is. Okay, SharePoint Designer is a very, very sharp, nicely tuned knife. That's what it really is. Now, what do you do with knife? Well, I guess it depends on who you are. So I make an analogy, I make a comparison that, this is what happens when you have this knife in experienced hands, right? And this is what happens when it's in non-experienced hands. You do end up with something, but it's just a collage of stuff, sometimes broken stuff, sometimes it's just things that are just not manageable anymore. People have done things that they should not have done in SharePoint Designer. So let's get this out of the way. And I'm going to say this, that yes, SharePoint Designer can become SharePoint Destroyer. Some people have used that word as well, SharePoint Destroyer instead of Designer, if it's not used by the experienced person. All right, you need to have experience using SharePoint Designer. You need to know where you're going before you embark on your journey in SharePoint Designer. Having said that, in SharePoint Designer 2010, things have become a lot easier to restrict. In 2007, still we cannot restrict much, so you can destroy a lot of things. 2010, I'll show you all the restrictions. I'll talk about all that stuff. You can do make it much easier for non-experienced people even to just get in there and do a few things and not be able to break things. All right, the story of SharePoint Designer began back in front page. Yes, I said the F word, front page. Front page 2003 was the first evolution of this functionality. Many people had bad experiences with front page. I did as well. However, once you started using front page 2003 with SharePoint 2003, it made a whole lot of sense as to the power of front page even at that time. The big thing that was there in front page, let me just go ahead and put this down over here in writing. It was called Data View Web Part. Right? I'm sure some of you have used the Data View Web Part. And using Data View Web Part in front page, you can do some really cool stuff. You can pull information from XML sources, from RSS feeds, even at that time, from web services. I remember bringing in Amazon products, images, descriptions, and other stuff by just passing some keywords through the web services of Amazon and bringing it in through front page and showing it in SharePoint 2003. Now, if you do this in 2003, that would be like amazing. That was at that time considered, wow, how can you do that? Now you've seen it being done with many different products, so it's not that much of an amazing thing anymore. But anyway, that's enough about front page. SharePoint Designer 2007, when that came about, it had a really good promise that was going to solve a lot of issues. It's going to be really dedicated to SharePoint, and it was. SharePoint Designer was a great first iteration of a product. Some of you might still be using it right now, which is fine, but please keep in mind that there are definitely many drawbacks of SharePoint Designer 2007. We list a lot of these kind of things in our book, in the SharePoint Designer book that we wrote a few years back now. And one of the things that is very difficult, unfortunately, to manage is when you open up SharePoint Designer, even contributors have rights to use SharePoint Designer to their sites, and they can break things. And site owners using SharePoint Designer 2007 can absolutely break things or delete sites and subsites and lists and libraries easily without knowing what they're doing, or create other stuff which is not packageable and kind of like workflows and data view web parts and stuff like that. So you got to be careful how you use SharePoint Designer 2007. SharePoint Designer 2010 has fixed a lot of those things. So you have a much nicer interface, first of all, to get into and to understand where to go. Right? SharePoint Designer 2007 didn't really give you guidance as to where do you proceed once you enter the environment. SPD 2010, on the other hand, when you get in there, it is very obvious where do you go to see your components of the site, Where do you go to enhance certain things, to create new lists and libraries and pages and site columns and content types. There's a variety of new stuff in SPD 2010 as well that was not there in 2007, like site columns and content types and reusable workflows and stuff like that. So I'll be showing you much of this stuff, whatever I can. So it might become a little bit more demo depending on how many questions you guys have and how many things I'm able to tell you before I begin the demo. So there's a lot of cool stuff you can do in SPD 2010, and it's very much packageable as well. Workflows are packageable. Data view web parts you can easily submit to the site gallery, and hopefully I'll get a chance to show you that as well, how you can take a data view web part and submit it to the site collections web part gallery very easily. Keep it in mind, SharePoint Designer 2010 is not compatible with SharePoint 2007. So all the stuff that I'm going to show you, that I'm going to talk about here, is not doable in SharePoint 2007. It's only for SharePoint 2010. Okay? Here's what I'm going to do. I'll pull up the slide here, but I'll take some questions and see what you guys have to say over here. Okay, hang on a second. So questions. By the way, there's one person, Jim, you're saying that you can't see the presentation. You might want to just close, go to webinar and come back in again. I don't see anybody else having that issue. So sorry about that, but that might solve the issue. Okay, so a couple of you I see, Sue and others, have mentioned that they've broken stuff with SharePoint Designer and you know, in the past, things like that happen. I've done it myself. Okay, so let's see. In SharePoint Designer 2007, there were functions to back up and restore a site. Where is it in SharePoint Designer 2010? That's what Gary's asking. Great question, Gary. There is none. The backup and restore functionality has been taken out completely. We don't have that in SharePoint Designer 2010. Okay. There were reasons behind it. I'm not going to go completely into technical reasonings, but let me tell you a few things. The first time I found out about this feature not being in the product, I had the same exact reaction, like, what do you mean you don't have that? That's something that my customers have been using. And this was back in February 2009 when I found this out, so 2.5 years or so back now, when it was in alpha mode still. And one of the main things about backup and restore is there's limitation of what you could do in 2007. Those limitations either could be enhanced and the product would have a different focus altogether, or you get away with that completely and move forward with other functionality that could be budgeted for the product to do. So the team decided at that time to get away with that completely, go with that, and go with the other functionality that they wanted to focus on. All right, let's see. Yeah, so one person asked about, Trish, you asked about SharePoint Designer being used in 2007 environment, and that I just answered that you cannot. Okay, let's see. Can I install both versions of SharePoint Designer on the computer? Yes, you can. You would just need to, now I think, Anne, you're asking this question, you're talking about 64-bit? Oh, you're saying 64-bit computer. Absolutely. So my computer right now that I'm running is also a 64-bit computer, and I'll show you SharePoint Designer. There we go. So I got SharePoint Designer 2007 and SharePoint Designer 2010 both running. And the reason that I was able to get both of them to run is, first you want to install the 32-bit of SharePoint Designer 2007. Then you want to install the 32-bit of SharePoint Designer 2010. You can't install the SharePoint Designer 2007 64-bit because there isn't any. So you have to get the 32-bit for both of them, and in that order. Once you do that, you'll be fine. Okay, Alex, you're asking about, would like to know more about governance around SharePoint Designer. See, that's such a difficult subject, you know, governance. Governance is not really around SharePoint Designer by itself. The governance has got to be around SharePoint, and then SharePoint Designer is one of the tools that you would use to do things or not be able to do things, or guide people. So it's really one of the tools. You cannot think about SharePoint Designer governance. It's really governance for SharePoint, and then SharePoint Designer is just one of the tools. Let's see. Don, you're asking, is there any viewable features issues between using Windows XP, Vista, or 7 when using SharePoint Designer 2010 or SharePoint 2010? Not to my knowledge. Yeah, I can't think of anything here. Okay, so I think that's about it. There's a few more questions, but I'm going to come back to that. Let's move forward over here. Now what I want to talk about here is different things, the capabilities of SharePoint Designer, right? And exactly what you can and cannot restrict, because I think people are interested in that as well. So let's talk about those things. First of all, SharePoint Designer is an application that you utilize to build solutions on top of SharePoint. And exactly what that means is that the components that you use to build solutions with SharePoint Designer are already there. There's not separate components that you're bringing in with the SharePoint Designer application. All right, I hope that makes sense. It's kind of like, think about Lego blocks, right? There's lots of Lego blocks, and SharePoint Designer is this tool that lets you mold and make creations, make structures with these Lego blocks that are already there. So having said that, let's some of this stuff here. You can create and manage sites. Same thing with lists and libraries and pages. You can do that pretty easily, no problem. In terms of pages, there are two different ways that you can manage pages. One is, it's called, and I won't write the whole thing here, but normal view. Another one is advanced view. Now, normal view is what you want people to be able to be able to use to manage their pages. When it comes to advanced view, this one over here, advanced view, that's where a page can be what's called unghosted or customized. Okay, and that's not really a bad thing, to be honest, but when you do unghost or customize a page, there are some ramifications of what happens, and you want to try to avoid that if possible, as much as possible, especially for site owners, sub-site owners. They do not need to be doing all that stuff. So more about that later and how you can restrict this functionality. There are some awesome workflows you can make. There's workflows, list workflows, site workflows, and also reusable workflows. List workflows, site workflows, and reusable workflows that you can make with SharePoint Designer. That anybody who has site owner permission can go ahead and make those workflows. Okay, extremely powerful. They cannot be restricted. In current version of SharePoint Designer, and that will actually most probably change, just a little hint, in the next version, something will hopefully happen, but right now, in this version of SharePoint Designer, we cannot restrict the ability to make workflows. Okay. Site columns and content types. This one is new to SharePoint Design 2010. If you want to manage your site columns and content types, you can manage them in the browser or SharePoint Designer. Now, as I mentioned before, I'm going to be giving you the pros and cons of everything, right? Because I do want to be honest and upfront with you to let you know the drawbacks and also the advantages of using SharePoint Designer. I have found that there are some things that are not available in SharePoint Designer in terms of managing content types and also for site columns. So personally, for the most part, I still find myself going into the browser to manage these things. But you can do most of the things using SharePoint Designer. And what you can do really, really fast. That's the key. But some of the stuff, like I'll give you an example. Publishing site columns, like HTML site columns or hyperlink columns, advanced hyperlink columns, those don't exist in SharePoint Designer. They're just not there. In terms of content types, when you make a new content type, and let's say if it's a document type of content type, and you want to upload a associated document template for the content type, that you cannot do with SharePoint Designer. You have to go to the browser to be able to upload a document template. So there are a few gotchas like that which I wish things were different or they might change, but that's just a wish. Let's see what happens. Now the external content type. This is an extremely powerful and very, very popular functionality in SharePoint Designer, especially with the developers right now, because this will let you take your line of business application data. Think about SAP data or Siebel data or Lotus Notes data or data from custom databases or wherever else, and you can bring that into your SharePoint environment directly using SharePoint Designer. Some really, really cool stuff you could do with this thing. We have videos on all of these things that I'm talking about, by the way, so if you do look on SharePointVideos.com, you want to look at the BCS videos for this. BCS, and that stands for Business Connectivity Services. The Business Connectivity Services functionality is the one where you go and create external content types, or also known as ECTs, and this is where you define your backend data and pull it into SharePoint. Okay, so that's what you're doing with this thing. Master pages and style sheets can also be, of course, created and also managed using SharePoint Designer. One of the problems that I've had with SharePoint Designer since the beginning is just the name itself. You know, I love the product, of course, I do so much with it, but the designer thing kind of throws people off. Designer. So people think that this is for branding, it's for designing look and feel of my environment. Well, of course you can do those things, absolutely, and I do find myself doing some of these things as well at times, even though I'm not a left brain kind of guy personally, so I don't do look and feel stuff as much. But SharePoint Designer is so much more in terms of functionality and building your solutions than just managing your look and feel of your environment. But yes, you can make or manage your existing master pages, and you can do the same thing for style sheets as well. Okay. Page layouts is a functionality that deals with publishing sites. I'll just write down PUB, publishing sites. Okay. If you have publishing sites, and I'll show you a publishing site, I'll open it up in SharePoint Designer and show you what it looks like. You'll see page layouts. All right. So you'll definitely see that. Good thing is, for page layouts and also for, I forgot to mention, master pages, both of these things you can restrict people from making, because these are really, really powerful items. Making master pages or modifying master pages should not be the role of just anybody in the organization. Same thing with page layouts for publishing sites. There should not just be anybody who's doing it. So you can go ahead and restrict that stuff. Also, one thing that has been there since the beginning, since front page days, is the data view web part, as I mentioned before. And using the data view web part, you can go ahead and get access to the external data, like databases data, web services data, XML file data, okay, directly from your site to the whatever you're going to, database or whatever else. You might wonder, what is the difference between this one and this one? So the difference here is this one right here is for the enterprise. There you go. While the one below, the external data one right here, this is scoped to the site only. If you make external data connections, that these are connections only, they can be used at the site itself and cannot be used throughout the enterprise. All right, I think I've spent more than enough time on this slide, so let me go forward here. Now, the drawbacks of not using SharePoint Designer. Let's consider these things, and then I'm going to jump in and show you a few things, all right? Let me see. Oops. All right. I think it's gone too fast here. The drawbacks of not using SharePoint Designer: the simple maintenance of objects like your page modifications, your list data, your metadata takes much longer. And you know why it takes much longer? Because with SharePoint Designer, when you're modifying these things, these components, you're actually going kind of like through the back door. You go ahead and make some changes for a list, for example, or you make changes for a library or some site information or a content type or whatever it is. And you push the save button, it pulls all the information together, the changes that you've made, and then just pushes it in at one time. It pushes all that stuff in at one time, and it's just much, much faster because you're using a fat client application like SharePoint Designer. In the browser, I don't know what your experience has been, but the clients that I've seen, and that's many, many of them, things slow down. Okay, first of all, it requires, let's say, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, like 4 clicks, for example, just to change the title of a site. 4 clicks. And then between those clicks that you're going to make, you have to wait for the server post, right? When you click on it, you got to wait. Second page, you got to wait. So SharePoint Designer is just much, much quicker to do these things. Secondly, non-developers. If you are not a developer, what are you going to do? You have the browser, of course, to do whatever you want with, but what about after the browser? You can get a third-party product, and then there's many, many good third-party products which help you with backup, which help you with cool calendars, for example, which help you with accelerating your environment. I'm not going to mention any partners, any of the vendors here, but you know who I'm talking about. There's many of them out there. But what else can you do? You're not developers. You're not a a third-party vendor yourself, or you don't have leverage listed to buy it. What else? What are you going to do? SharePoint Designer is the way to do a lot more other stuff that you cannot do with any other product. So if you do go the code way, you have to manage that code, and there you can also, of course, make workflows and external content types and data view web parts or whatever else you want to do with code. But of course, just keep in mind, doing it that way, doing it the hard way, what I call it, to begin with, means that you own the stuff. Bottom line, return on investment for SharePoint is not being utilized, not being realized if you're not using SharePoint Designer, in my opinion. All right. So the question here becomes, who should be able to use SharePoint Designer? Should it be anybody? Should it be everybody? Or better yet, we should ask the question, who should be allowed to use SharePoint Designer? Right now, you should be able to. Many say that developers only should be using SharePoint Designer and nobody else, just the developers. All right, you might be one of them who says that. That's fine. The other extreme is the non-believers say, no one, keep this thing away. SharePoint Designer should not be used by anybody. Okay, and that's all right. The question here, should you give it to the end users? Right? Who is the end user? Should you give it to the end users? That's a very, very important question to be asking yourself. Here's what I'm going to propose here. To ask you who is an end user. And I have some definitions here. This, I think, is very important to note and to participate in, because you'll know that who else thinks what about end users out there. Since there's a few hundred people on this webinar, we'll get a good sampling as well. Here's a definition one. Readers and members. That's who I consider to be end users. Definition number two. Readers, members, designers, and sub-site owners. Also, many companies call them power users. People who have been given one site or a few sites, but not the whole site collection. Definition three. Site collection administrators, as well as everybody else. Readers, members, designers, so forth. So here's what I would like to do. I would like to put up a quick poll over here to ask you, what do you think? Definition of an end user. 1, 2, or 3? And then I'll share the responses with you, so then you get to also see that what are your colleagues saying. So the more of you respond to this, the more data we're going to get, the easier it's going to be, I think. So I'll just wait for a few more seconds here. Okay, even if you are not in the position of determining who end users are, you can still go ahead and take a guess. That's fine. What you think the end users are. I'll go ahead and wait for 5 more seconds, and then let me go ahead and close the polls. Okay, let me close it now. 67% of you voted, and here's what you had to say. It's coming up, hopefully soon. There we go. So most of you picked definition 2, followed by definition 1, and some of you picked definition 3. And that's exactly what I see also in the market. Being a trainer and consultant focusing on SharePoint, that's exactly it. Definition 2 is by far the most popular. Sub-site owners, people who have been, you can call them the evangelists, you can call them that one guy or that one girl that everybody runs to in the department when they have a question, whatever you want to call it. That's definitely the case. You give them the sub-site owner permission, but nothing else, and then they do stuff, but they cannot do anything at the site collection level. Wonderful. Well, thank you very much. Here's what I have to say here. As far as SharePoint Designer is concerned, readers and members have no need for SharePoint Designer. Okay. Then, if your definition is definition 1, you probably want to stay away from SharePoint Designer. No, don't give that to anybody except maybe yourself using it. But definition 2, designers and sub-site owners, or definition 3, designers and above, should all be using SharePoint Designer. All right, let's talk about some of the restrictions that you can put on SharePoint Designer. This is very important. I think that Microsoft now has given us some privileges, some restrictions that you can put on in SharePoint Designer, right? And this, what I'm going to do is, instead of just showing you the slide and talking through it, I'm going to show this to you so you can see exactly how this works out, all right? My environment must have, oh, here we go, still live over here. That would have died by now. I have to re-go in there. So this is Cloud Share. That's what I'm using over here. Let me change the resolution. Make sure also you can see my environment here. Yep. I use cloudshare.com, and I'm going to actually give you a URL a little bit later which you can use to get access to my environment that I use. I give it away, share it for free, no problem. And in here, what I want to show you is, let's say you're a site collection administrator. Okay, so you're a site collection administrator and you want to be able to make sure that you restrict certain things from your users as far as SharePoint Designer is concerned. You will go to your top level site, which in my case is just SharePointVideos.com. It's an intranet site. Go to Site Actions, Site Settings. Within Site Settings, the only way you will see Site Collection Administration is if you are a Site Collection Administrator, of course. And in here, go to the third last link. It says SharePoint Designer Settings. And you'll see the following screen in this exact following manner. Okay, this is by default the case. The first checkbox is checked. Everything else is not checked. And while this is up, let me open up SharePoint Designer as well to show you exactly what it talks about. So let me go Site Actions, Edit in SharePoint Designer. And that will take a few seconds for it to come up. Okay, so here's SharePoint Designer 2010. I am currently the site collection admin, so I have all the privileges. I can see all the subsites, the permissions, and everything else. On the left here, I can see the name of the site, of course, the list of libraries, workflows, site pages, etc. The things that you can control here are going to be the following. So all files. This you can go ahead and remove for people who should not be seeing it. Page layouts, master pages, all these things that you can go ahead and say, you know what, I don't want my users to be seeing these things. And I'll show you exactly what they have inside of them, maybe the reason you would not want them to be going into the stuff. Other stuff you cannot restrict right now. So, but think of it this way, that external content types, data sources, and that kind of stuff, which is extremely powerful stuff, if they don't have access to the back-end data anyway, they can't do anything with these things. So they cannot go to a database, of course, if they don't have the privileges to go to a database. So don't worry about it. It takes care of itself. One more thing that you can restrict over here is when a person goes to modify a page, let's say the home page of the site, an edit file, you have edit in normal mode and edit in advanced mode. This has been the issue, the point that has had many IT professionals lose their sleep over, because people have been going, especially in 2007, SharePoint Designer in advanced mode to make their changes. Advanced mode says that I'm going to go ahead and let you do anything that you want to do on this page. All right, you want to rip it apart, you want to detach the master page, attach a new master page, you want to work with any of the components of the page, I'll let you go ahead and do whatever you want. So what happens when you use advanced mode is, you know, initially, let me show you. Initially, pages come from databases and also from web servers, right? So web server. Right, that's how a page gets built. Oops, I can do better than that. Here you go. So let's say this is a page with some content, right? Initially, the way the page gets built is information from database and information from web server together make this page. When you customize a page in advanced mode, or also called unghost a page, then this connection most probably, not always, but most probably will get broken. And then everything is going to be in the database, and it's going to be coming from a database, which is, quite honestly, is not really a bad thing if this is what you intended to do, so that's fine. but for the most amount of users, all the subsite owners, all of your power users for that matter, designers, they should not be doing this thing because they don't know what it is. And when it's time to upgrade to the next service pack or the next system altogether, 2012, 2013, or whatever that SharePoint is going to be, you're going to have pretty major headaches, unfortunately, because they're going to want you to take this stuff and bring it over, and it will not come over exactly the way you want it to be. So I would suggest as much as possible, do not use advanced mode. At least don't have your power users use advanced mode. You can use it because sometimes, hey, guess what? Sometimes you got to do what you got to do, and that means that, you know, doing it in advanced mode. So that's fine for a few pages here and there. So now the question becomes, how do I restrict all these things if I wanted to? Let's see if I can show you. See this one, the first checkbox here just says, do you want SharePoint Designer to be enabled or not? If you just uncheck this box right here, that means that nobody can use SharePoint Designer except yourself as a site collection admin. If you do have this checked, if you check this checkbox, this talks about the ghosting of pages or the customization of pages that I just showed you, the advanced view. If you have this unchecked, then nobody can go in advanced view and make changes. That just saves you a lot of headache. This one right here prevents people from going and changing master pages or creating new master pages, and the same thing with page layouts. So I would definitely recommend unchecking this as well. And this one, which says, can people go into the all files structure? Okay, that's what it says with website URL structure. Can they go into the all files structure and move things around there? So here's what all files show you. It shows you everything. All the internals of the site, private stuff, CTS is all the content type stuff and more. Catalog's got master pages and data sources and more. So it's got everything in there, and it's very easy to just hit something and hit delete, and that's not a great idea to give them access to it. So let's take this away. Same thing with master pages. You got all the master pages, and also page layouts appear here as well. Some of the page layouts, and additional page layouts appear here. So you want to have, of course, your site collection administrators and beyond have access to this stuff, but nobody else. That's a recommendation, at least from Asif Rahmani, from me. Okay, that's usually the recommendation from Microsoft as well, but I'm not going to speak for them. This is my recommendation here, that you want to be able to hide master pages, page layouts, all files, and also the functionality to edit file in advanced mode from your end users. And end users in this case means readers, members, designers, and sub-site owners. So let me show you actually how this works. I'm going to go ahead and log in as a different user. His name is Carlos. And Carlos currently is a designer. Okay. Actually, no, it's not. Well, I put him. I should say designer. Yeah, no, he's a designer. I'm sorry, arguing with myself over here. So he's a designer, and I've taken away some of the privileges from him. Let's see what he sees. So first of all, I'm going to go into the home site. Probably not. Here you go. Carlos G. Super secret password. Okay, so I'm going to have Carlos now, who has gone to the same site that I was at before, open up SharePoint Designer, and let's look at what he sees. Okay. As you know that I have not made any changes from what I've shown you, so all the other checkboxes except the first one are unchecked. Here it is. All files, not there. Page layouts, not there. Master pages, not there. In terms of site pages, when he goes in here, clicks on home page and edit page, edit file, the advanced mode is grayed out. Okay? As it says over here, in this mode it is possible to customize the page from the site definition, which should not be allowed for most people. So there you have it. As far as restrictions go, you can definitely do that. Oops, excuse me. I wanted to actually minimize this thing. All right, so moving on forward, what I've just shown you is a site collection administrator's prerogative for what to and what not to restrict is in terms of site owners for the site and designers for the site. Okay. Now, if you look at what can a site collection administrator can do, that stuff can also be restricted. Currently, by default, nothing is restricted for a site collection administrator, which I firmly believe that that should be the case. A site collection administrator's hands should not be tied by not giving them the privileges to use SharePoint Designer to its fullest capability. And the site collection administrators should not just be regular end users. They should be folks who are leading up departments or leading up intranet and so forth. But if you did want to restrict their privileges, here's how you do it. Central administration, which of course only a SharePoint server administrator can go to. In here, general application settings, and from there you go to SharePoint Designer settings, configure SharePoint Designer settings. The checkboxes that you'll see are going to be the exact same checkboxes, but now you're talking about restricting or allowing site collection administrators to do certain things. So the scope of who you're talking about restricting is changed. Instead of owners of a site, now you're talking about site collection administrators. Everything else remains the same. If you do disable some of the stuff over here and click on OK, then what you're going to see is those site collection administrators themselves won't have the rights and they won't be able to, of course, give the rights to anybody else. So their checkboxes in their site settings is also going to be unchecked. Okay? Hope that makes sense. Let me move on over here. Just want to make sure our time is okay. So I'm going to go for about 10 more minutes and stuff, and then we'll go ahead and take some questions. Oops, I wanted to make this a surprise over here. Okay, so here's something that I think all of us should be aware of, that currently the organizational structure of most organizations is the following. You got developers, IT professionals, which is a very, very small sliver, and then you got end users, which is a huge big population in the organization. But we are heading towards this scenario. This is the world of citizen developers, folks who are not really developers and not technical people, but they're not end users either. They're right in the middle. The citizen developers term was not created by me, by the way. This is a term that's been used by Gartner, the firm Gartner, for many, many years now. Well, not many years, a couple of years now. And they claim that 25% of the applications in just a few years from now will be built by these folks, citizen developers. You know what? I have no reservations and no qualms with what they're saying, actually, because I'm seeing that right now already, and I'm sure you're seeing it as well, and you're doing it. Maybe you are a citizen developer. If you're making applications or have been making applications using Access, using Excel, using SharePoint Designer, using InfoPath, and other kind of stuff like that, you are a citizen developer. You're a no-code developer who's making these solutions happen without having to do these things in a technical Visual Studio type of environment. So that's where we're headed. Now, what kind of activities do your users currently already perform in production? So in here, I took the assumption that I was betting that most of you are going to say definition 2 is the end user definition, which is sub-site owner as well. And I was right about that, so that's great. But what do your sub-site owners do right now in your production environment? Do they make lists and libraries and manage metadatas and views? I can bet you that many of you are going to say, yeah, they do that. For their own sites, for their own small sites, they do that. They can make their own list, they can make their own libraries, whatever they want to do, they can do. Can they manage security? Absolutely. Can they make new sites? Yes, they can make new sites as well. Can they manage site columns and content types? Yes, they can. And do they make workflows? Now this, some people might say, no, they don't make workflows. They have no idea what it is. But to be honest, I've seen people, many of the who you would consider end users or the power users, making these things without other people knowing about it. They find out about it and they start making it. So it's happening already, and it's happening directly in production. It's happening directly in a site that they have ownership for. So all this stuff is already happening in production. The scenario of all the different things going through a development, testing, staging, production, that scenario is really not happening anymore as far as SharePoint is concerned, as far as these kind of solutions are concerned. I hope you also find this to be true. I'm sure many of you, this resonates with you, that this is the case right now. This is the reality. Many people are just going into the site and making these things. So having said that, here's what I'm going to say. It is okay to use SharePoint Designer directly in production. Many people ask that, hey, how can I make these solutions? How can I make everything in SharePoint Designer in a development site and transfer it over? Well, I'm going to say here that, you know what, you don't have to transfer it all over. You can use SharePoint Designer directly in production, with some caveats, of course. Now, I'm not saying that, of course, everything should be in SharePoint Designer, doing it this way. So here's a couple of things that I would like you to remember. Workflows, there are reusable workflows that we have right now, and the whole nature of its reusability allows you to make stuff in development and take it, package it up, and take it to integration testing, for example, and then functional testing, and then staging, and then production. No problem. You can do all that stuff with reusable workflows. Okay. In fact, you can also publish workflows in one site as a global workflow once you've already worked out the kinks and everything else. So all that stuff is definitely possible, and that should be done that way. You don't have to go directly in production all the time to make that happen. Second thing is data view web parts. Now I won't get a chance to show you what I was thinking about showing you, which is taking a web part and submitting it to the site gallery. But you know what, I'll point it out. It's a video that we have on our site to make that happen. We have videos that show you how to do that. Data view web parts, extremely powerful. You can go ahead and hit any kind of repository, almost any kind of repository with data view web parts. You should be making these things on a test site or on a development site and then packaging them up and deploying it on a regular production site. That's my recommendation. So aside from those two things, majority of everything else you can do in SharePoint Designer directly in production. Okay, that's a recommendation at least. So what I'm going to do now, I do have the slide that I just put in saying demos. As I have time, I'll show you a few things, especially depending on what your questions are. So let's take the questions and see what you have to say before I show you some more stuff here. Okay. Marissa over here says, the citizen developer says hello. Hello, Marissa. Yes. All right. What else you got over here? So let me start from the bottom over here. Do you have to apply the restrictions at each site collection? Is there a way to restrict it across all site collections in a farm or web application? Can you apply the restrictions to most people and allow a named subset of people to use it? Now, Steve, these are awesome questions. So let me read these again. Do you have to apply the restrictions at each site collection? Currently, yes. There is no way to do it farm-wide. Okay, you have to, I shouldn't say that. There's no way to do it farm-wide, but you can do it at a web application-wide. When I went to central administration, maybe I failed to point that out, but there was a drop-down which said that pick the web application first and apply these permissions to the web application. Now, having said that, once you are a site collection administrator and you're going in there, yes, over there you can only do it for your site collection one at a time, one site collection, another site collection, etc. Now, you can use PowerShell. You can use PowerShell to go ahead and script out restrictions, and with that you can go ahead and run a script to do it with several site collections, but you can't do that if you're not using PowerShell. Don, you're saying that Asif, thanks again for the overview. I have to leave early, but I would like to know if the info will be posted. Yes, I am recording this whole thing, so this will be going on our site, and that's going to happen at the most by the beginning of next week. So the whole presentation is going to be there. And you're asking, do we have any PowerShell training? You know what? That's one of the topics right now that we are searching for the right author to make this happen. We don't just get anybody to make these trainings, so we have some really expert authors making these trainings on our site. We don't have PowerShell training yet, but we will. Definitely, that's on our radar. Okay. Gene, you're saying, did you just log into the information worker VM with Carlos? Yes. Yes, it's the information worker VM. That's exactly what I'm running. And I'm doing this in CloudShare, as I mentioned. You know what? I forgot to give you this thing, didn't I? Let me give you this URL before I go forward, because I'm going to forget later. Hang on a second. Let me type this in there. So this environment that I'm using to show you everything can be accessible by you if you wish by using this URL. This will give you 14 days completely free access to the whole environment that I was using. It's amazing because if you had to buy this separately, it would cost you thousands of dollars. And then after 14 days, if you want to continue using CloudShare, then you pay them $49 per month, which still, at least for a guy like me, this makes a whole lot of sense to keep. But for you, it's of course you decide. But it's having a virtual machine completely in the cloud is what this provides you. So this is going to provide you the virtual machine that I was using right now. All right. Let me go forward here. Oops. All right. Other questions here? Okay, so Gene, you're also saying that please try to keep it to 1 hour. You know, it's definitely my hope every time that we try to keep it to 1 hour and 15 minutes, to be honest. 1 hour for the actual webinar and then 15 minutes for your questions. This is for you guys. If anybody wants to leave early, that you can do that, of course. Betsy, hi Betsy, you're saying any undo or recycle bin in SharePoint Designer to recover from an inadvertent delete or change. Unfortunately, there are not many undos in SharePoint Designer. There is, of course, an undo button, and it will let you undo lots of text and everything else. But for example, if you made a new list or you made a new column and you want to undo that, no, you can't undo that. You have to just go ahead and delete that thing. Okay, let me take a couple more things and let me show you a couple more things as well. How can we prevent users from advanced mode? And okay, so I answered that question already. How do you hide master pages, page layouts from the left nav of SharePoint Designer? Mark, I already answered that question, so I hope that you got that one. Here's a question by Jord. So Jord, you're saying, so end users are a superset of power users? Well, a power user has different meaning in different organizations. What I've seen most people use power user for is either to describe sub-site owners and or to describe site collection admins. Okay? So some people decide to make somebody a power user and give them site collection admin privileges. And others, they say, no, power user is just going to be a sub-site owner. So it's up to you exactly how you want to define it, but that's what I've seen being defined before. Okay, let's see. One more over here. Will this be such, yeah, hang on a second. Oh yeah, here's a good one. Barbara, you're saying, if I'm using a SharePoint Designer 2007 workflow, can it be transferred into and can be used in SharePoint Designer 2010? No, not directly. So if you have a workflow, you cannot just package it up from 2007 to 2010. However, having said that, you can go ahead and take a whole site which has workflows, upgrade the site to 2010, and then open up a workflow in SharePoint Designer 2010. You can do that, but you cannot migrate or just package up a workflow directly from 2007 to 2010. Can't do that. All right, let me show you a couple things which might be useful to you guys. Hopefully you can still see my screen okay. Let me just make sure. Okay, I think so. So there we go. Here's my CloudShare environment again. Full screen. Now, you know, when you have a workflow, let's go to workflows here, because that's, of course, a huge story in SharePoint Designer. When you have a workflow that's a reusable workflow, now, we don't have any right now, but if you did, you can go ahead and put that, you can promote that workflow into a globally reusable workflow. The word globally here is kind of used a little bit more freely than I would have liked personally, because this does not really mean global to the environment. This means global to a site collection. Okay, so globally reusable workflow means global to site collection. You should know that. If you want to promote something to be global, I'll do that really quickly and show that to you. Reusable workflow. Test. Okay. And here's my workflow. I'll just put a log statement in here. Just testing. So here's a very, very simple workflow. Of course, workflows is a whole different story. I cannot cover that here. But you see right here, there's a button for publish globally. That's what you got to press. Once you do press that, it's going to ask you, are you sure you want to do this? And if you say yes, then it's going to become a globally reusable workflow. Along the same lines, you can take a workflow, you can go ahead and package it up, and that packaged workflow, you can go ahead and take it to a different environment altogether. And if you want to learn more about this stuff, by the way, check out our videos over here. If you go to SharePointVideos.com, under free videos, first of all, you'll find things like creating a workflow on a list using SharePoint Designer 2010. I believe there's, here we go, another one talking about built-in approval workflow template and how do you modify that, what do you do with that, and all that stuff. If you want to go deeper into workflows, you can go into video categories here, and under the video categories we have SharePoint Designer 2010 designing workflows right here. And we have lots of stuff over here, including talks about things about site workflows, reusable workflows, using InfoPath to modify the workflow forms, transporting a workflow from one site to another site, globally reusable workflow, and a whole lot of stuff. Okay, so check that out. As far as data view web parts is concerned, that stuff is here somewhere as well. Here we go. Customize list view web parts, customize data view web parts, using data view web parts for conditional formatting, for retrieving information from a database, and a whole lot of other stuff. Some of these videos turn out to be more than 10 to 15 minute average because there's just more information to be covered, but usually most of the videos are between that duration, 10 to 15 minutes, and it's all demonstration. Okay, let's see. I'll take a few more questions, then I believe I'll have to end the call. So let's see. Office 365, Betty's asking about, is there any gotchas with SharePoint Designer 2010 or even SharePoint Online in general? That's an awesome question. Betty, you know what I would like to do, and this might sound a little bit self-serving in nature, but I apologize, I don't mean to do that, is I'm going to point you to an MSDN article that I have written. And this actually just went up only a couple months ago now. I'm going to go to home, go to our blog. So from our home page, you can go to blog, which is the blog.sharepointelearning.com. And in here, I'll do a quick search for MSDN. Hopefully I'll find that here. Here we go. Office 365, customizing SharePoint Online using SharePoint Designer. So this is a, oh, that's not it, is it? You know what? I probably didn't put it there, but there's a blog entry. Okay, I thought I had a link to that article here, but it's not. But this blog entry also talks about how do you use SharePoint Designer 2010 with Office 365 or SharePoint Online. And you'll be really happy to hear, hopefully, that most of the things in SharePoint Designer are accessible with Office 365. Okay, so most of the things that you're used to doing, you can do with SharePoint Designer as well, with Office 365 or SharePoint Online, whatever you want to call it, in our case. Okay, Bala Chandra, you're asking, hi Asif, is it possible to implement loops or for while loops in workflow? So that, many of you already know that is unfortunately one of the drawbacks of SharePoint Designer still. You cannot have any looping that you can do in SharePoint Designer, which I know that's a big drawback. But if you, now things will get better is my understanding, hopefully. So people are working on it. I cannot say too much about it. But you know, right now, currently, we do not have any looping. Hopefully, things will get better, and we'll have some of these functionality that we do not currently have yet. That's all I can say right now. Michael, do all workflows need to be based on create or update? Create or update. I think you mean, so when a new item gets created, a workflow gets kicked off, right? Or an item gets updated. Yes, that is true. So that, or you can manually kick off a workflow. But yes, these three are the options that you can do. Create something, workflow gets kicked off, manually kick it off, or update something and workflow gets kicked off. Because all the workflows are really based on content management. That's what really all the workflows are supposed to be doing. They're based on managing some kind of content or security, sometimes other things. But it's all based on a site or related to users. So that's why Microsoft wanted to have it kicked off based on these conditions. Sue, you're asking, will you show how to copy a new form, modify, copy, and realign? I'm not sure exactly what you mean here, Sue, but if you're talking about forms in terms of InfoPath form, yes, I'm not only showing it to you, but we have InfoPath videos as well that you can watch, which talks about how you can use the different forms functionality for workflow forms, and also list forms, and also library forms. So that would be right here. Design electronic forms using InfoPath. In fact, the workflows I should have just taken you here. You can go from here to do that. InfoPath right here in video categories, you'll see. So that's me. I made the InfoPath and also the workflow stuff. Other courses were created by other very, very talented people. In here you'll find the forms functionality, okay? And also, just since I'm here, let me also mention that we recently released the branding tutorials, SharePoint branding by Yaroslav. So check those out. There's a lot of cool stuff there. And we also have dashboarding and reporting services. This is by Bruce. Bruce has done an awesome job with this stuff. Check this one out, and we're going to have a couple more coming pretty soon. SharePoint project management, SharePoint taxonomies, that's coming soon in a matter of a couple months, or maybe even less than that. And then also this will get released really soon. We already have had the DVD for Access Services available for a while. This is also by Bruce. And now the videos, all the videos will be up on the site soon as well. Okay. Let's take one more question over here. Can I use BCS or database connectivity features to validate user input against a list of values from a database table? That's what George is asking. Can I use BCS to make that happen? Yes, you can actually, because all you're doing really is getting the information back in terms of a connection, right? External content type from a database table. And then you can go ahead and in your logic, in InfoPath, let's say, or somewhere else, you can go ahead and see if this list of data that you've just gotten contains a certain user or contains some data that you're looking for. So yes, absolutely, you can do that. Okay, here's one last question. Let me just take that by Lionel. SharePoint Designer workflow cannot loop back. What does that mean? So that just simply means that the looping functionality of, for example, you can say that, go ahead and take the certain action, and all the different items on this list. That is something that all of us have wished has existed in SharePoint Designer, but it does not exist yet. But like I said, keep your fingers crossed. Can't say more, but things will change. All right, folks, I really appreciate all the questions. It's been great. Thank you very much for keeping it so interactive. Hopefully we can do this again. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording right now and just let you guys know that you will find this recording for yourself or anybody else you want to show on our site pretty soon. So see you next time, and thanks again. Thank you very much for coming. Hope to see you next time. Bye now.